Approximately 200 billion tons of non-biodegradable plastics are dumped into the oceans every year.
An experimental virus meant to destroy Garbage Island goes wrong, and the trio have to save the estranged people trapped there. It feels like this episode was meant to touch on some pro-environmental message, but only in broad strokes.
People were careless about where they threw away their trash. The currents push it all together and it becomes this.
This episode makes you aware of it, sure, but it substitutes the actual oceanic pollution it causes with something unrelatable like mutant birds and the trash monster, overshadowing the importance of the issue. It also solves the issue with Waybig throwing everything into space, which isn't something viewers can learn something from to prevent the growth of this in our everyday lives. And this solution doesn't even fully work in universe either. Ben 10 isn't a show that's centered around learning moral values, but usually it's standard that when you tackle a topic like this, it's usually complemented with advice on how to solve the issue, or at least mention ways to prevent things from getting worse. But this episode was still pretty fun, so it has that going for it. This story used some new but very different music for the Waybig fight that sounded more old school than usual, perhaps to tie in with all the Captain Planet references. There's a lot of great character moments here, like how smug Ben is about seeing Rosem again.
Colonel Rosem, this must be pretty embarrassing for you.
Or Kevin lovingly admiring Gwen's intelligence. This is also a big episode for Kevin and his jokes, but they tend to get too repetitive. Kevin's jokes are best when they catch you off guard, not when they're the driving force for his character. His knowledge and passion on old cartoons arguably doesn't make much sense for him either.
Well, I don't watch a lot of television. Come on! Nobody else watches television but me?
Locke and Bryson were interesting homages to the X-Files, but weren't much aside from being a reference.
Am I overly dramatic? Am I really?
But Bryson's unconventional portrayal was humorous.
The only thing that matters is getting out of here before we become victims to the all-powerful garbage patch.
It's always intriguing to see how cartoons handle animating large swarms of miscellaneous junk, and I liked how this episode handled it. The trash monster design itself left a little bit more to be desired, but there's not much else you can do with a character that's supposed to be made of everyday civilian garbage. His animation is fantastic though, never once looking like they cut corners with his movement or textures. The animators did consistently have intense movement be complemented by trash getting kicked up, which helps emphasize that they aren't on solid ground. But it's notable that this episode and Cosmic Destruction have a scene with Waybig dramatically rising out of the water near a bridge, and ends with Waybig ejecting them into space. But the Waybig fight itself was very well choreographed, and it was nice to see him feel truly powerful again, even though he was pretty evenly matched. It's safe to say this episode doesn't make its mark in the franchise though, and while this episode was very amusing with all the action and humor, it felt like something was missing to ground it all together. It doesn't feel like much when you're watching it, and when it ends, it feels like nothing got resolved. This episode continued the theme of Ultimate Alien tackling real-world issues, and while most of the time it does a great job, this one wasn't really it.
We'll be okay.
I wish I could believe that. I want to believe.